Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here with you today for the fourth episode of The Talk. As you know, The Talk is the live series I've launched after launching my book, The Brand Impact Through Consumer Insight. And I'm very, very happy to be here with you today and to take you through a very, very interesting and important subject, which is building a brand strategy based on profound consumer insights. So, before we deep dive into, the this subject, which is the brand strategy, let me do a little reminder of what we've seen on episode 3, because it's building actually the basis of what we're going to be doing today. So, just as a little reminder, what we've seen on the episode 3, I've introduced to you the AIM framework, which is assess, implement, and monitor, and which actually can accompany you in a 360-degree way of how you can use consumer insight in building strong brands and building strong companies. So, and in last episode, we've deep dived the assessment phase, and we've started by talking about a very important notion that I've learned from Harvard Business School training I've done. It's the willingness to pay. And the willingness to pay, as I said, is actually how consumer value your brand compared to the actual price. And what is recommended is actually to always have a higher value, a higher willingness to pay than the price you are charging. That allows you, first of all, of course, you can charge premium. The highest is the willingness to pay, the more you can charge your clients. But also, the higher is the willingness to pay, and the difference between the willingness to pay and the price, the more you're going to sell, because your product will be of high value, and clients will have that feeling of doing a good bargain. So they're going to be buying you at a good price to them in their mind. And that difference between the willingness to pay and the price is what your brand brings into the table. And that's why today we're going to talk about the brand strategy and building a brand strategy. But before that, let me also remind you of the last 4 components I've talked about on the last talk, the episode 3, which was about the 4 components of success in a market. And it's a bit not in exactly the same order I've talked about in episode 3, but let's take it as it is. First of all, you need to identify a target market. You need to find who are you going to sell to. The second thing is the opportunity size. Evaluate if you have a big enough opportunity on that market. You're not going to go into a market where there is no opportunity for you. The third component of success is you need to make sure that the market you're going to is a growing market. Never, ever go to a shrinking market. Again, and I've talked about it on my last episode, when you go to a market that is shrinking, it will require a lot of efforts, a lot of money, a lot of time for you just to break even, let's say, or just to keep the revenues you're doing. So the best is to go into a growing market and work in your brand, work on your strategy to make sure you are growing with that market. And the last but not least is the tension. You need to identify what is the problem your target market has and how you're going to solve that tension. So this is a little reminder of what we've seen in episode 3. And as I've said, one of the most important components of success is the tension, because you cannot bring into a market a product that does not answer attention, that's not solving a problem, that's not adding a value or adding any value to your market, to your target market. So you have identified attention. What is it? What's the next step? Definitely, coming up with a product or an offer that answers that tension. But is that enough? That's innovation. You can actually innovate in a way you bring in a product with some functionality that do not exist in the market, launch it, and you answer your consumers or your target market tension. To me, that's not enough. Very simply because it can be copied. Let's say you launched an offer with XYZ functionalities. Tomorrow, another competitor, probably with more money, probably with more resources, can copy exactly what you've done. They will spend more money on marketing it, and they can just, throw you out. So, one of the first and the most important things to me, yes, you need to get a good product. Yes, you need to be innovative. That is a must. But you also need to build a brand. That is the shield that is going to protect your product and your offer in the market. That is what the people will feel about your offer. It's not only about functionalities. There are so many brands of cheese, for example, out there. Why would you buy brand A and not brand B? And for that, to illustrate it a bit more, let us play a little game. I've prepared for you a few questions. So let me take you through those questions, and then we'll talk later on. We'll discuss it furthermore. First question is, when I tell you, think about a brand in sports, what is the first brand that will come into your mind? Give you a few seconds to think about it. You don't have to write it down. Just think about it. But I'm pretty sure you thought about Nike, isn't it? Second brand, in energy drink. Which brand comes into your mind when I say energy drink? Most probably Red Bull. Third one. When I talk about fast food, what is the brand that comes into your mind when I talk about fast food? I'm pretty sure 90% of you, or maybe even more, thought about McDonald's. Yes, Adidas is one of the brands, but globally, most of the people would think Nike for some reason, and we'll see why. And then, last but not least, and I have a bunch of examples, but let's keep it like that. When I talk about electrical car, what is the first brand of electrical car that will come into your mind? Pretty sure it would be Tesla. So, why did you think about these brands? Why did you? Yes, Rita, Tesla, definitely. And I was right, I guessed it right from the beginning. So why did you think about these brands and not others? What does it make these brands so special that today, when someone talks about sports, we think Nike. When someone talks about electrical cars, we think Tesla. When someone talks about fast food, we think McDonald's. And when we talk about phones, we think Apple. These brands have something in common, and it is the fact that they are meaningfully distinct brands. What makes a brand meaningfully distinct? What is it that can help you as a marketer or yes, Rita, they were not only the first. Apple wasn't the first. Not sure if McDonald's was the first on the. You mean the first to be launched in the market, but they are leaders. Definitely not only on in terms of leadership in market share, but also in terms of leadership in the heart and the mind of their consumers. So to be meaningfully distinct, for your brand to be meaningfully distinct, it needs to have 4 components. It needs to be a leader. Rita, as you said, it can be the first one to launch, and they control the market. So they are first in the heart of their consumers. They are the first in the mind of their consumers. So you choose a segment. We're going to talk about it more in details in a while. So you choose a segment. You make sure you are leading in that segment, you are leading in that niche. When people think about it, people on that niche, on that segment, think about your category, they think about your brand. You need to connect. It's not about the functionalities, it's about the emotions. We all know that at the end of the day, we all buy or we all decide based on our emotions. So brands that succeed, brands that are meaningfully distinct, they make sure they connect to the heart, to the emotion of their consumers and their target market. Third component to be a meaningfully distinct brand is to be unique. You cannot be like all the other brands out there. You have to find something that will make you unique. Today, we know, for example, uh, in the technology sector or in the phone sectors, for example, there are so many brands out there that are very, very affordable, but at the end of the day, people will go and buy Apple because Apple has a unique positioning. And you also need to be consistent. You need to make sure that you are consistent across all the touch points you are communicating with your clients with, or your consumers, or your target market. That means you cannot be fun on your advertising on TV and serious on your advertising or your post in LinkedIn, or you cannot be a brand that inspires exploration on in a let's say on your packaging, for example, and then when you are communicating on digital, you are about nurturing, you are about being zen. No, you have to be consistent across all the touch points, and you also need to be consistent on the time. You cannot be changing your branding and the way you communicate, you look and feel. You cannot be changing it every other day. You have to be consistent so that people start positioning you in a certain way. So, four components for a brand to be meaningfully distinct. So, if you have a small brand today, or you're even a big brand and you want to become the McDonald's, you want to become the Coke, you want to become the Nike, you need to make sure you have these four components. You need to find a niche and lead on that niche, and we're going to discuss about finding a niche. You need to connect to the heart, to the emotions. You need to be unique, and you need to be consistent. And how are you going to do that? You will do that if you are able to have a clear brand strategy by integrating the consumer personas with the brand archetypes. And I talk about my book about this in details, but let me give you a small definition of how you can define a good consumer persona. So first of all, before even getting to the consumer persona, you need to go into the category you are serving, try to understand the people, the target market, the different attitudes, the different usage of the different brands in the category. Understand the demographics, the profiling of the people or the target market in terms of demographics, in terms of psychographics, in terms of lifestyle, but also in terms of needs, emotional and functional and social needs. Once you understand that, you start segmenting. And I would recommend, and I strongly recommend, not to segment by demographics, because that's not what actually defines why a person will buy a brand A versus a brand B. It's what the emotions, it's the needs, it's our emotional needs, it's our social needs that push us to choose a brand A that probably looks like us or fits with us, our personality and our emotional needs, and not only the functionalities. Again, as I said at the beginning of this live, when you go for the functionalities, it's easy to be copied. And another competitor can come and copy you and put a price that is cheaper than you, or maybe have a better distribution, or maybe put some more money on marketing. They can kill you. So make sure you are building a brand that will connect to people's emotions. So once you segment, as I said, segments based on emotional needs. can be a combination of emotional, functional, and social needs, but make sure it's about need. It's a need-based segmentation, what we call in our jargon in market research, a need-based segmentation. Don't segment on demographics. A woman that is 45 years old can buy a Tesla or can buy a Mercedes. These two women don't have the same needs. One is looking for probably environmental reasons. Another one is more about classy, about status. So they both have 45. They both have 45 years old. They're both, let's say, high income people, but they're not gonna buy the same brand because they don't have the same emotional and social needs. So make sure that you segment based on emotional and social and functional needs. Once you do that, you will have, 5, 6, 7 segments, up to 8. Choose one that fits your brand DNA. If the brand already exists, you look at that segment and look at your brand DNA and ask yourself, does it fit? Am I close to this? Or maybe if you're just launching a brand, you don't have a brand there yet. Try to find a segment that will definitely have an opportunity. That's definitely, the size is big enough, the value is big enough. There is not so much competition on that segment. There is no or low competition, as I said, and there is an opportunity for you to grow, and it feels good for you to launch that brand on that segment. So once you do that and you identify the segment, you are clear about it, profile it. That's when the profiling and demographic comes in. It's not the other way around. You don't segment based on the demographics. No, you segment based on the needs, and then you profile. Once you profile it in terms of demographics, you profile it in terms of, psychographics, you profile it in terms of lifestyle. If you are in a B2B business, for example, you would want to profile it in terms of industries. You would want also to profile it in terms of the mindset of the decision maker. Let's say you're selling trainings to companies. You would want to have let's say you would want to have clients who or companies that have CEOs who have a growth mindset, who are willing to pay for trainings to train their teams and train themselves. So you need to make sure that segment you are choosing is right for your category, but also you need to profile it in terms of demographics, psychographics, and lifestyle. And now you have identified the consumer persona because you have profiled it, you deep dived it, you understood it very well. Now your brand. On the other side, you have your brand. And for that, you need to choose a brand archetype. And I talk about that on my book. And I have a whole section about the brand archetypes. I'm not going to go into the details of it today, but I will show you in the book. I've put a panorama of the archetypal types that you can choose with, details, defined, or let's say details of each archetype, what it is, so that you can choose the right archetype for your brand. And then from there, you need to start building what we call a brand ambition. So you've segmented your market, you chose the segment you want to be in, and you have chosen the brand archetype that you want, that brand archetype which is a good fit to the consumer, let's say, persona. Let's say if you chose to talk to people who are looking for adventure, who wants to be in the risk, who wants to be in the go, your brand archetype, for example, can be, as per here, the explorer. Let me read it to you, what we have in the book. Explorer seek adventure and freedom. Brands like GoPro cater to this archetype, emphasizing capturing exciting moments and exploring the world. The cameras are marketed to those who crave adventure and new experiences. So if you choose to talk to this kind of people, you can be an archetype of an explorer like GoPro. If you choose a different segment, anyways, there is all the details on the book. You can choose a different archetype. Once you choose the archetype and the client persona, you want to build the brand ambition. And I talk also about that on my book and the brand, and I illustrated it in a very nice and easy way for you as a house. I call it the brand house, and it starts with the brand purpose. You define your brand purpose, you define your higher purpose, you define the insight with the tension. What is it? What is the problem your target market has, and how you're going to answer that? That's the insight. The functional benefits of your offer, the emotional benefits of your offer, the brand character that you're going to bring from the brand archetype you've chosen, the momentum, which is how you're going to set the trends. What is it you're going to bring new? What's the innovation? The brand heritage, if the brand exists, the need state, which is the segment you have chosen, which segment you have chosen, and the target group. So I have all these details in the book, and I'm pretty sure it can help you build a very strong brand strategy. So, and this is, as I said, a model of a brand ambition. There are so different models out there used by multinationals which they call brand ambition or brand key, but I've chosen to use a brand house on my book to simplify it for you if you want to build a strong brand strategy. So basically, this is about my talk today. As I said, I want to keep it short and sweet. So just as a little reminder to summarize what we've talked about today is to make sure that you build a meaningfully distinct brand. And to do that, you need to be a leader. You need to connect. You need to be consistent. You need to be unique. And to actually be that these four components, you need to define a niche, understand your audience. I will say it and I will never stop saying it. It all starts by understanding your audience and your target market. Then build a brand that connects emotionally. You do that by identifying their emotional needs and their social needs. And you come up with the brand archetype that fits with that need. You build a brand ambition or a brand house, which will help you later on build, put together all the strategy with all the details of the look and the feel you should have to actually, as I said, execute correctly this brand strategy or execute correctly the vision you have about your brand. And one last thing you should also do is think of creating a brand book. And when I say creating a brand book, I'm not talking about just, the logo and the colors and, the typography. No, the brand book should also include the kind of tone of voice you're going to have, which communication channels you're going to go to, and how you're going to communicate in the different communication channels. This brand book will be just like your Bible, the Bible for your brand, which means if tomorrow you're not there, anyone can come and execute an advertising or can execute the brand strategy without any issues. So, as I said, make sure you understand your consumers. Make sure you are building, connecting with your consumers in an emotional way. Talk to their emotions. Don't talk to their to their mind only or to their brain only. Talk to their heart. It's very, very important that you talk to their heart. And make sure that you document all that in, first of all, a brand ambition or a brand house, which I talk about on my book, and build a brand book that is clear, that is detailed about not only the brand assets, not only the logo, the colors, the fonts, but also all what the touch points that your brand will have with their target market. Thank you so much for being with me here today. We're going to have another episode next week, next Thursday, 10 a.m. And it's going to be about innovation this time. and how consumer insight can help you stay ahead and set the trends and be innovative, all by answering clients' need and making sure that your innovations are good fit to the market. Thank you and see you next week.